All right, so welcome to Tiny Toys Tuesdays, episode 13. Tonight we have our very first interview with our official third-party painter, Zach
Hello.
Crotts. So welcome to. This is the first time we've actually met. He's been painting our armies for good 6 months, probably longer than that.
I'd have to
Um,
check. It's
yeah,
been a minute.
it's
It has been a
been
little while.
It has definitely been a while.
Legion of the First Prince was a real army when we started.
Oh yeah.
Oh, rest in
That makes
peace.
me real sad. That makes me real sad. Gosh, and now I gotta take all of those nicely painted models and like blend them in. Like I'm gonna take that Guo part of the new Nurgle scheme, and it's gonna be like, what's going on here? And I'll be like, I don't know. But yeah, so Zach Crotts is here tonight. Um, I guess just maybe do a quick intro. I mean, um, I guess we have some of the slides in the beginning here to where we can do that. But um, maybe just a quick name, where you're from, how long you've been doing this type of thing.
Sure. My name is Zach. I'm from the cold, frigid land of Ohio. Our major export is depression. And
But
I've
the state of good mornings.
it is the state of gray mornings, at least where I live.
And,
Um,
and speaking of Ohio, it's funny because anytime you ship the armies back to me, it has to take a train for whatever reason.
it's very weird.
It takes a
I
train.
remember one of the first times that I shipped something back to you, it got delayed
Yep.
because the track was out, and I was like, I've never in my life been hit with the monopoly card of the tracks are out.
Yeah. Good old Ohio.
Yeah.
We've actually been to Ohio quite a bit. We've been to Dayton, Ohio, quite a bit. I
Oh,
don't
it's
know
funny. We have a rule: never go to Dayton. I drive down to Cincinnati all the time, and the only rule driving to Cincinnati is that you do not take the Dayton exit because otherwise it's a straight shot. But there's a point in the highway around just south of Columbus where the highway really wants you to go to Dayton instead of Cincinnati. And it's a little, if you're not paying attention to which lane you're in, you will accidentally go to Dayton very easily.
we are into the drumline scene, or I guess we were.
Ah,
And I know Dayton, Ohio is like that's the championships, the world championships for that stuff. So we've been there quite a bit.
okay.
All right, let's jump into just some housekeeping items. There we go. So this is just the Smite GT. It's coming up in September 9th and 10th. At the same place it was last year, Bell Bank Park. Again, this is the largest, at least last year was the largest GT in Arizona. So we look forward to bumping those numbers up a little bit from last year. Monument Hobbies is also one of the sponsors, so that's pretty cool. Speaking of just hobbying in general, Jason will be doing a lot of the paint competition stuff, so that'll be cool. And again, House of Hobbies is doing the AOS side of it. There's also 40K. Matt Baugh is doing the 40K side. So yeah, so just if you haven't already, go sign up. Definitely cheaper if you sign up earlier than later. But yeah, so that's the Smite GT. All right, let's get into the next slide. This is the art of the week. Obviously, we've already introduced him, Zach. So go check out his Instagram. And I didn't even know you had an Etsy shop. Where, Erica, did you find that?
I do. I have an Etsy shop. My parents and I have an Etsy shop.
Okay, all right.
It's brand new and very fledgling.
Okay.
Because I never really appreciated this. I've shopped on Etsy a lot. It's my first time attempting to sell anything. huge amount of respect to people who actually sell a bunch of stuff on Etsy, because uploading listings to Etsy is one of the most soul-crushing things I've ever done in my life. They don't make it easy. It's a horrible, horrible process.
So what are you like? What are some of the things you sell on there? Is it just painted models and stuff like that? Or...
Yeah, painted models are going to be an option that we roll out there.
Okay.
I have a 3D printer, and between my parents and I, we have 4 FDM printers and we have a resin printer. So
And
we
what's man, this could be a whole nother show, is 3D printing, right?
It sure could be a
What's
show that Games Workshop would not like.
yes. I mean, hey, if it's not a
Hey, we are
sponsored,
not sponsored by Games Workshop. So.
Good point.
if the tournament scene is not sponsored by GW, as long as the TO is cool with it, I am 100%. Man, I gotta say, some of the coolest. Don't get me wrong, Games Workshop has stepped their game up as far as new models. Like, they are fantastic. Like, they are getting better and better. But
Oh yeah,
but there are just some 3D printer STLs out there that like are just absolutely
they are crazy,
incredible. One of them was the oh my god, starts with an A, and they're really popular, and their models are super detailed.
Archvillain Games.
Yes, that's it. Boom, nailed it. Their models are unbelievable. I actually started looking at like 4K 3D printers because of their model range. Like, they are absolutely incredible. We just don't have room for a 3D printer, so we couldn't do it. But
Or the patience.
yeah, I mean, you have to set
Yeah.
those things up right. So going back to, I'm again going off on a tangent, but what's the difference between an FDM printer, real quick, and a 3D printer?
SLA or resin printer.
Resin.
So a FDM printer is for physical media filament. So for example, things that I print, which I do not have anything directly. Yes, I do. One moment. This is a failed print. So things that I print are made out of something called PLA, which is actually made out of corn.
Wow. Okay.
So this is corn.
Wow.
It comes in a big spool, kind of like thread. And they come in 1 kilogram spools of just a big, long, spun tube of plastic, and it turns it into, through some sorcery that I only kind of understand, complicated 3D models,
Okay.
1 layer at a time. Resin printers do it kind of in reverse by, there's my cat, by curing resin 1 layer at a time, and they can get much, much higher detail. So that's what you would want for something like miniatures, because the lines are much smoother and the print times are a lot faster for things like minis.
Gotcha. Okay.
So FDM basically is better for terrain, which is what we got into it for. We play, my wife and I and my friends, we all play Dungeons and Dragons fairly religiously. And I want to say now 4, maybe 5 years ago, we were looking at getting some terrain for our actual tabletop games.
Nice.
And we came across this company called Dwarven Forge.
I've heard of them.
And they had this beautiful castle set with it was all modular. The gate worked. The drawbridge could lower.
Wow.
And it was $1,800.
Oh my goodness.
So we decided,
you know what? We're going to print.
Let's just get a printer. And
gosh,
then,
when it's cheaper to buy the printer to print the item
yes,
than it is to buy the item.
Yes, and this was like I said, this was 4 or 5 years ago. They've only gotten better and cheaper at the same time in those intervening years. Okay. So now we use it to print all of our stuff for our own tabletop terrain. I just printed off a whole 6x4 foot board worth of Tyranid terrain for 40K.
Well, now that I know you do 3D printing, that might be scary. I also know Cameron. I don't know if he's here. I don't know if he's online right now, but I know he also has a 3D printer as well. So we might take you up on some of that, depending on if we need anything.
Oh yeah,
And we can visit his Etsy.
Right.
yeah.
Yep, that is very true. Very true. So definitely
If
go
I
take.
ever finish loading things on it.
So definitely go take a look at that. All right, so we're gonna just jump into some of the again. Some of these paint jobs are just so good. I do love the paint scheme that we decided on for the Bloodthirster and the Legion of the First Prince army. Still one of my favorites.
I loved painting that army, man. That army
so
was
good.
so much fun to
Yeah,
paint.
yeah.
Rest in peace.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm still gonna use those models, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
I tried playing them in 40K. It's not the same.
oh, I'm
Need
sure.
way more troops. Can't really
Yeah.
just do the Greater Demon Monster Mash and hope to swing for the face.
Right.
Doesn't
Right.
work as well in that game.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the first slide here, the beginnings. Erica, do you wanna go through some of these? I don't know if I have the PowerPoint up. Is it just me?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So, I mean, we kind of started talking about yourself as an artist, but like, how did you get started? How long have you been doing this?
So my original like introduction to the hobby was back when I was in middle school. I was either 13 or 14 years old. I have a huge amount of family. I'm originally from Texas. We moved up here when I was in like first grade. There's my dog. Um, and we have a huge amount of family down in like the Houston, Galveston, Dallas sort of triangle. And my uncle has always been huge into Warhammer and painting. He's an artist. He sells like canvas art. Um, and he's always been really big into the hobbying side. And so I was down there staying with him for like 2 months out of the summer because summer vacation is so damn long.
Yep.
And my parents would just, at my request, ship me down there on a plane, and I would hang out with. I'd just bum guest beds from random members of my family for the summer. Uh, and he introduced me to it. I was kind of interested in it. I had no money being a 14-year-old. So my interest and ability to participate in it largely lasted those 2 months that I was able to
Gotcha.
use all of his stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And then honestly, I didn't touch it for years and years. I got really big into MMORPGs and
Yep.
online gaming. And then we had my son 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. And I needed to stop playing Memorpagers because you
Gotcha.
cannot pause them.
Yes.
So I
Yes. They're
needed,
ongoing.
yeah, I needed something to do that I could, at a moment's notice, just set down and walk away from.
Yep.
And the funny thing about mini painting is that the paint dries if you do that. That's the worst that happen, and that's the thing that you want to happen anyway, for the paint to dry.
Right.
So we got back into it after we had my son 5 years ago. My wife and I actually started painting together,
Oh, nice.
and I just never stopped since then. I like to say that I started off by completely ruining minis, and then I just ruined each progressive mini a little less than the last one until they started looking good.
We learn from the mistakes, right?
Oh yes, I started off in the Game of Thrones tabletop game.
Ooh,
I
nice.
backed the Kickstarter for it because it was 100 miscellaneous dudes in armor for $100. And because I played D&D, 100 dudes in armor was very appealing to me. I was
Right.
like, oh my god, that's all the models I'll ever need.
Right.
Oh, to be young
You
and naive
think,
again.
and then
Yeah,
classic,
right.
yeah, classic crack.
Man,
Plastic crack for
I
sure.
can't get through 20 plague rats, much less 100 models.
Spoiler, not all of those are original 100 models are painted. Turns out I just don't like how Starks look. Sorry, any Stark loyalists out there. I got super bored of painting them. I painted all my Lannisters. They're all
Nice.
painted.
Nice.
But yeah, and then we just sort of kept on going for a long, long time. I wasn't even playing any of the games for the things I was painting. I was painting them for Dungeons and Dragons to make our table cooler, or just because I thought that a model was neat and I wanted to paint it.
Right.
And then one day I posted some stuff on Facebook, and a guy just sort of cold asked me, "Hey, do you paint for other people?" And I was like, I've never considered that question before.
Right.
I can, I guess we can try that, and that's how that started.
Right. Right. Well, I am extremely lucky that I found you. I think I found you on Facebook, and then the rest was history from there.
Yes, that was where you found me. I was posting in Warhammer sales groups that I was doing commissions, and occasionally getting removed by admins because that wasn't allowed in all of those pages.
Yeah, sometimes they're real touchy about that. But hey, I'm lucky that that it worked out, because it's definitely, you have saved us so much time. So.
And I like working with y'all because I hated the client finding process.
Yeah.
It's because it's a lot of, let me tell you, it is so many, people message you, they say, "Hey, I've got 4,000 points of Lumineth Realm Lords and I really want them painted." And you spend, 4 hours over the course of a couple days talking to the guy and pricing, and it all seems good, and then they just never message you again.
Right.
And you wasted all that time like planning out how you're going to do it.
And I think a lot of it too, when I was originally looking for a painter, I didn't realize how expensive it was. Sometimes it can be really pricey sending it to these like established corporate painters, right? And I was like, yeah, this is not. I don't need this. Like, this is
no.
I understand time is money, but at some point, like, it didn't work for our cost, right? So
well, and we're not going around entering painting contests and building 6-foot high towers of doom to set all of our models on and take to a show. And
And I hear you on that. That's actually where I got a lot of my original pricing structure from. Was I was looking at, I'm not going to name any names, but I was looking at a couple of these pay to paint services, and they get you in by saying like, oh, as low as $5 a model. But what they don't mention until you really start looking into it is that like they have all these tiers and bracketed, quality standards. And the $5 a model thing is to paint a night goblin. In 2 colors without a wash. And it looks like crap. They've base coated a model for you for $5.
Yeah. And that adds up when you're doing 60 models, 60 clan rats or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So, I was going to say, imagine a Skaven army, 120 clan rats base coated for $5 a piece. You paid $600-700 for models that don't look good.
Yep. That being said, though, there is a fine line, right? Like you have spent a lot of time painting a lot of our models. You have saved us tons of time with just the models you've painted.
And they're gorgeous.
And they look fantastic. And there's definitely a fine line on where that price needs to be, because like, I respect your time in painting those models, especially for as good as they look. So, there definitely is that fine line. Like, I would never want to cheap someone out of the time they spent in doing the models. Like, and I want to say, like, some of the things I've requested have kind of been outside your comfort zone too. So, like,
sometimes,
I understand that too. So, it's a lot to ask. So I completely understand from a pricing perspective how that can work. So
and I go with the flat way that I do it, because I don't the way that the big studios paint it, where they get an order in and they say, okay, we're gonna paint Caligar to tier 5, and we're gonna paint the sergeants to tier 4, and we're gonna paint the infantry to tier 2. Man, I don't want to do that. I just want to paint, and I'm gonna paint them how I would paint anything else. And I'm not going to worry about, does this model have 2 steps? Does this model have 9 steps? Do I need to do an oil wash? I just paint them. I just make them look good. And I don't fuss about all this tiered nonsense unless you ask me for OSL, then I charge you more because that shit is hard to do.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on. Let's go to. We kind of already talked about this. As far as what got you into painting, it was way back when.
Yes.
I also started painting models back in fantasy days for vampire accounts. That was my first army. I wasn't any good at it. I was like I was like, man, I must have been 14, 15, and I was just terrible at it. But you know, that's definitely we're kind of similar in that aspect of doing it way back in the day. Was it Games Workshop that was your first?
Yeah, so it was playing some good old Floorhammer 40,000 in my uncle's garage, Orcs versus Tyranids, back in 3rd edition Warhammer.
Wow, that's crazy. What were you, the Nids or were you the?
I was the Nids.
You were the Nids,
and I'm still the Nids. Now that I'm back into it, and the local shop has started playing Warhammer, I was like, you know what? I always wanted a Nid army. I'm getting a Tyranid army, and I'm gonna paint a Tyranid army.
I bet you're excited about the Leviathan box then.
I'm 4 or 5 pre-orders excited about the Leviathan box, man. I'm very excited. The last new model that we got was 2015.
Nids.
And our basic infantry is from like 98.
Some of the new model sculpts that they have for them are pretty cool looking.
The Nid players were all very happy about it. Very happy about it, because I'm not joking. Some of the line is from the 90s. Like it hasn't been touched in 20 plus years. It's crazy how long it's been.
So me and Erica don't play 40K. We've got some models for like Kill Team and stuff like that. But we're not big into 40K. But I will say this: if those combat patrols are as good as what they're saying, that might be my bread and butter, because like a 600, 700 point skirmish match with some of those 40K models would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, and I've been playing it. Our local shop here has been doing a lot of boarding actions recently, which is their new like 500 point versus 500 point mode that happens on like a ship that has been breached, and you're fighting on a spaceship. So it's all very close quarters. It's very small squads. Games only take 45 minutes.
Wow, that's pretty
it's
nice.
great. It's
that's
a really cool way to play the game. It's a little sad because you can't use the big guys, because you're on a spaceship. But yeah, they've talked a lot about how they want the combat patrol boxes to sort of be capable of being their own game mode, where you and your buddy both get one and pull it out of the box and can play a reasonably balanced game like that, which would be a huge improvement, because all their box sets before this have been hilariously unbalanced. In terms of point value, even to like dollar value, it's just been all over the place. It's a total crapshoot.
I'm really excited for the new direction that they're going with 40K. Like, I know some people like the complexity that 40K is that's produced there, but that's one of the biggest downsides for me not playing 40K. Is there's so many books you have to have, there's so many rule sets you have to have. Like, I know it's complicated, and it's more complicated than Age of Sigmar, but if they dial that down a little bit, I'm totally on board, because the 40K stuff's super cool. I'm really interested in it. So.
And they're going more Age of Sigmar with it for sure. They're kind of switching over to War Scrolls for units. A lot of the abilities that you used to have to dig out of a rule book or a core book or a faction supplement or a White Dwarf issue. They're just putting right on the card. So that like, I have a Farseer. It can do these things. And that's a Farseer. That's what it does. There's no more, I have a Farseer with a bolt pistol and a lash whip. I have a Farseer with an Eldari staff.
So they've realized that AOS is superior, and they're starting to...
you better watch out, Erica.
Yes,
People
because
I know.
I've played some Age of Sigmar. Yeah, I've played some Age of Sigmar. If they played it at the local shop I would play it more. I have 7,000 points of painted Sylvaneth ready to go,
Nice.
literally
When
whenever.
we talk about how absolutely
Yeah.
gorgeous your Sylvaneth
Yeah, for
army
real. The
is,
Sylvaneth
Thank
is
you.
fantastic.
my goodness.
It's real nice.
Oh, it's great.
Spoiler, it's super easy.
Oh, hey, more power to you. If I tried to do that, I would fail completely.
It's like someone who's riding a unicycle down a mountainside saying that riding a unicycle down a mountainside is really easy.
Thank you.
I'll just keep sending
Just
stuff to
saying.
you.
It's if they played it more at my local shop, I'd honestly like playing it because I like the rules for Age of Sigmar more. I've played a few full-sized games of Warhammer, and it's just such a damn chore, man.
Right.
That's why I'm excited for 10th, is because they're really pushing it towards the Age of
Sigmar.
Sigmar style. They're slimming it down, they're simplifying it, they're making it so that your unit cards are like that big and actually fit on the card. I mean, some of the units, a single unit in Warhammer 40k, like a headquarters unit, like my Hive Tyrant. I just played a game. Its rules were a page,
Yeah.
like a full printer page, standard letter sheet of paper. It was like a 5-paragraph essay
Yeah, that's too
of
much.
telling you all the crap that this thing can do. And guess what happened? I forgot half of it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go on. I'm really excited about this topic. What tools do you use?
Oh,
like
boy.
brushes, tech equipment, paints, basing materials, other go-to supplies that you might go to?
I'm actually recently very, very sad about one answer to this question, because you'll remember that black grit that your demons are based in.
Yes.
That is Army Painter's black battleground basing
Okay.
material,
Okay.
and they don't make it anymore. It's
Wow.
gone. You
Okay.
can't buy it.
Okay.
They still make their brown battleground. I just poured that all over my lap. That's not closed.
It is now.
It is now. They still make the brown one, but they don't make the black one anymore. They discontinued it. So I hunted high and low to find a mix of different things that I could use to substitute it, because that was far and away my favorite basing material.
Okay.
And you can use, the crazy thing is, for basing especially, you can use anything. Lots of people use real dirt and real sand. They just go out into their garden and they scoop some up and they bake it for 3-4 hours at about 150 degrees in their oven to kill everything that's in it. A lot of people use coffee grounds.
Sorry.
That is totally okay. I have a dog too. I know that life.
We have 3 of them, so they're obnoxious.
Oh boy. A lot of people, for like foliage and things, they use tea leaves because they're about the right size. They cut open tea packets of like green tea or black tea and just sprinkle, and it looks great.
Okay.
Brushes, I use all kinds of stuff. Let me dab that off. I use these, which are brandless brushes that come in a big thing like this for like $3.
That's smart.
I use it for anything that will absolutely irrevocably destroy your brush.
Gotcha.
So a lot of metallics get those brushes out for. Anything that is resin-based paint that will literally eat the fibers of your brush and dissolve them over time.
Okay.
We get the cheap brushes out for. Then I do have, these are great and these are cheap-ish. What are they? They are Royal Soft Grips, and I love these things. These are like my day-to-day workhorse. I use these all the time.
Okay.
They're affordable, but they're a lot higher quality, honestly, than they cost.
Okay, that's good.
And then the big thing that I upgraded to was an actual set of dry brushes, which I use Artis Opus's stuff.
we bought some. We were at LVO and we ended up seeing what's his name? Oh my god, I can't find my spacing his name. face hammer guy, but I can't remember his name. It's gonna drive me nuts. But yeah, we ended up buying one of his dry brushes.
Yeah, they're great. I love those. I used to just use, the cheap little brushes for dry brushing, and it always kind of looked like crap uh, because it wasn't the right kind of brush. It was hard to control. Um, the other thing that works really well for that though is makeup brushes. The big
Yeah.
round ones for blending
That's what I heard.
on your
Yeah.
face, they work just as well
Yeah.
as dry. They're great dry brushes. Um, very, and you can get them. I mean, you can get those for $1.
Right,
From
right.
like it doesn't need to be high quality. It's not going on your face.
Right.
It's touching plastic. As far as technical equipment, I do have an airbrush. I do use it when it's actually warm out, which means that I haven't used it in 6 months because it is
Yeah.
just now getting warm out.
Yeah.
I originally, the very first time I cracked it open, I did have like my airbrush booth and my spray booth and my respirator and all that set up down here in the basement. And I finished spraying some metallic on a big giant that I was working on, and I turned around and my basement was misty.
Oh, okay.
So that all got packed up and sent to the garage. Hence, when it's warm out,
Right.
I will use the airbrush. A lot of people I've run into. I mean, I don't want to say a lot of people, but it's an odd thing in the painting side of the hobby is people can be kind of snobby about stuff. You run into a lot of really interesting opinions, like that airbrushing is cheating, or that using contrast paint isn't really painting.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And other various things like that. And
I say
they're
shenanigans.
wrong. Yeah, they're wrong. There's no other way to put it. Respectfully, they're
Yeah.
wrong. It's tools.
How can
That's
you
like
do
saying
something
that using
in half the time, right?
yeah,
Like I want.
it's like saying that a power drill is cheating because you have a screwdriver.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. That's a really good. It's a good analogy.
They're just tools, and it all depends on how you use them. And if I can do a spray coat of 80 infantry in 2 hours with my airbrush instead of spending 10 hours painstakingly doing it with a brush.
Yep.
Why would you not do that?
Correct,
Like
yeah.
don't torture yourself. It doesn't have to take as long as you're making it take.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, time is money, right? Like you definitely want that efficiency for sure.
Yeah, and even not from just like a commission painting standpoint, but even in your own, your time is finite. You only have so much of it on any given night. If you only have maybe 2-3 hours a night tops, or maybe like 5 hours a week of hobby time to get in, like be efficient. Make the most of it. Do whatever you gotta do to get the gray gone.
Right, 100%. I'm totally on board.
Paints, I've bought a ton. I have a whole wall in the other room that has probably a dozen different brands on it. I actually need to get rid of them because there's several brands that I've bought, I've tested, I've seen what I liked. I've definitely found what I don't like. And nowadays I do confess I use a lot of Citadel paints. They are expensive as hell.
Yes.
They really are. They're disgustingly expensive. But they are consistent. Every pot of a Games Workshop color that I've ever bought has been the same damn color. I can't say that for Army Painter. I have bought some pots of Army Painter that were allegedly the same color that were not even close. So and I understand paint batches will vary. My dad is actually a chemist. He works in making paint finishes and things like that. So I'm fairly well acquainted with the process of paint batches and different print runs and things like that, and how the mixes can differ. Just an ounce can change 1,000-pound batch and how it turns out. So I do use a lot of them. I also use a lot of my metallics. These days are fairly static. I use Vallejo's liquid and air metal series. They're supposed to be used out of an airbrush, but I don't know why they specify that. I think it's because they're thin.
Gotcha.
So they can go through an airbrush, like out of the bottle with no
That's
dilution.
actually nice. Yeah.
It is. But even being thin, these suckers will coat in one go. It doesn't matter what you're painting over. It could be a bright red. No, gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
Completely covered. And then really the other two that I use a lot of, Pro Acryl is a recent addition.
Pro Acryl Monument Hobby. So just I'm gonna be biased, and that's only because Jason, the owner of Monument, is a good long buddy of mine from way back in the day, before he even got into painting.
Really?
Yeah, before he even, well, not so much before he got into painting, before he had his own company. But yeah, I used to play games with him online all the time. We used to play Smite and all kinds of other Mech Warrior Online. We used to play all that stuff online before he even got into the painting. So now, and he's local to Arizona. So we go over to his shop every other week to play games. So
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome.
I'm definitely biased to Monument Hobby paints. I know the white for Pro Acryl is the industry best for white.
It is. It is.
So
You notice I held up a white one.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And guess what? Right next to it is another white one. I burned through this stuff.
Yeah.
White.
He's nailed it.
I have tried white. White. True white paints have titanium in them. Titanium is inherently chalky. There's not a whole lot that you can do about that, except that he somehow made a pact with the Crossroads Devil and did something about it, because his white paint is actually liquid.
Yeah.
Whereas, small indie companies like Citadel can't make a halfway decent white paint to save their life.
Right.
I know why they call it white scar. It's because I am scarred from having to use it ever. It's like painting texture paste on your Mini. It's atrocious.
Right.
But this stuff is amazing. And the other brand that I use is Chimera.
Okay.
As big of a pain in the ass as it is to get over here.
Okay. I don't think we've ever used Chimera, right, Erica? I don't think have we even seen that? I don't even know if we've seen it.
Chimera, and it normally comes, I've replaced the caps on a lot of them. It normally comes with like these little pop-off caps, but they're almost as bad as Games Workshop's bottles.
Yeah, I don't know. You would think that as long as Games Workshop has created paints, that they would do something about the pots that they put their paints in.
I have my conspiracy theories about it. So these things have like 13 different points of closure, and if you only get 12 of them, it will dry out faster.
So it's then to
I'm
get
not
money.
saying that it's by design, but
Wouldn't put it past them.
But I wouldn't put it past them.
That's pretty funny.
Chimera is they are, for the most part, they are single pure pigment paints. So their color vibrancy is super, super high. And a lot of paints, I will confess, this is one thing that I don't do a lot of color mixing with Citadel paints, because Citadel paints, part of the thing that is good about them is they have 57 shades of turquoise. So if you want a weirdly specific shade of turquoise, you can just go get it.
Right.
And you can paint 2,000 skinks the same color, because they will still have that weirdly specific shade of turquoise.
Right.
But their formulation is a mess. They're already mixed to hell and back. So anytime that you try and mix up Citadel pots into a different color, it gets desaturated and muddy super quickly. Because of it. Pure pigments, you don't run into that issue. They mix very, very well. And they retain a lot of that vibrancy that's in them. The Sylvaneth are completely Chimera color, which is how the pale yellow is still yellow, despite being so bright. I never did manage to do that unless you were using, again, specifically a pre-mixed, very, very bright yellow from another line. I never managed to get that with anyone else.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I've tried the whole gambit. I've tried Army Painter. Their stuff is fine. It's really hit or miss. Their metallics are awful.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we know that.
they're
We s- we
yeah,
s- we started with Army Painter because they had a nice we ended
they
up
have the
going.
mega set and it's
That's
really
exactly
cheap.
that's
And
exactly what we
everyone
did.
buys it because it's
Yeah,
really
and that's what we
cheap.
did.
That's
But
what I
as
did.
but as I've I mean, we don't paint nearly as much as you do, but we started with Army Painter, then we did some Citadel stuff because we liked the consistency of the paint, and
Yeah.
then now I'm like, now that I know Monuments out there, like I just like their paint, and
Oh
it's like
yeah.
a one-stop shop for me. So
Oh yeah.
I
Oh,
definitely like them.
and I suppose I would be remiss not to mention them. They're an oldie but a goodie, is I do use Windsor and Newton for oils,
Oh, okay.
just because they've been doing it for like 100 years and they know what they're doing. So
Sure. I mean,
might as well.
if they know it, then go to it, right?
Yeah. As for hobby equipment, this is my Bible. You need shitty snippers and you need good snippers, and you need both.
Okay, all right.
I have workhorse snippers, which are these. These are Army Painter snippers. They're
Look at
very
that.
good.
Yeah.
Army Painter makes good tools. These things have lasted me a honestly really impressively long time, and I do not play nicely with them.
Okay.
I'm talking thick hunks of resin, maybe an inch thick. I have sawed through it
Wow.
one snip
Okay.
at a time with these things. They do not do They don't do like little sprues well anymore because they're very dull. So you get a lot of that pinch that you then have to
Mhm.
go in with a hobby knife and shave,
Yep.
which is why you keep a nice, high quality pair of snippers around, is for little fine plastic sprues like this, because they cut right through and there's no cleanup afterwards. They don't pinch at all. They just snip it off, and it saves a ton of time on assembly. Because you're skipping out the entire step of going back over every single piece of sprue that you just removed and shaving it down with a knife
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
the little nubbly bits
Yep.
off.
I mean, that's my three-step process is to cut it out, then use the knife, and then use the scraper for all the mold lines. So
Get one of these.
okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the amount of building I do is ridiculous.
It'll save you so much time. You'll notice it in a single box how much faster it goes
Okay. All right.
with a really nice pair of snippers.
All right. Any other things you want to call it as far as tools go or supplies?
Only one that I can really think of. Well, two really. If you're into kit bashing and customization and doing big crazy things with your models,
Okay.
do yourself a favor and get a little hand drill. It'll save you
Okay.
so much time, especially if you want to magnetize stuff.
Yep.
Just don't get a little vice drill. Get like a WOW drill or something, a tiny little electric hand drill. I use it and they're great and they're really cheap. So it'll save your palms from having to sit there and patiently screw a bit
That
by
sounds
hand.
miserable. That
And
sounds miserable.
it's super miserable.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I can recommend is it only takes one drink of what you think is coffee.
Okay. Does that happen a lot? I can't.
It's
ever
happened to me. That's why this is not a joke. This was bought for a reason, and it was to make sure that that literally never happened ever again.
Wow, that's so crazy. And you're not the only one. That's such a big deal for people that paint all the time is mixing up something they drink out of with a water with a something you dip your paints in, which is crazy
Yeah.
because to me I don't know if I would ever even do that, but I guess I just don't paint enough, so it hasn't happened to me.
So like a lot of the times too, I will paint. Depending on what it is, I will either get really focused on doing it and not really. I'll sort of lose
Zone
track
out.
of my
Yeah.
surroundings, and I'm simply zoned in on the model that's in my hands. Or if it's an easier step, like I'm just washing models, it's not really something you have to pay a ton of attention to. I'll do it while watching Netflix on my screen, which also means you're not really paying the most attention in the
Right.
world. And if your water cup is a gray mug and your drinking cup is a slightly different shade of gray mug, it is real easy to just blindly reach and take a sip while you're watching Breaking Bad, and
Right.
then your whole night is ruined.
Yeah.
Because it is awful. It is a
That's so
terrible,
funny.
terrible taste.
That's so funny. I didn't think it.
Duly noted on that one.
Yeah, don't drink paint water, kids. Don't.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet, but it's only a matter of time.
What about, like, do you use any sort of wet palette? Do you?
So yes
coming
and
straight
no.
out of the pot?
A lot of times I'll do it straight out of the pot, especially when it's something that's already liquidy, like, a wash. This is Druchii Violet, comes straight out of the pot. Things like a contrast paint will come straight out. Anything that's already more liquidy. I will use a wet palette if it is something that I am going to be painting for an extended period of time. So if it is a bigger model especially where I have mixed something up, a mistake that I made a lot early on is that I would mix this awesome color and then it would dry out and I would never, ever, ever get it just that way again.
Right.
So when you're painting something larger, I always make sure to use a wet palette because it'll keep the paints. I mean, paint will stay usable as long as you close it up when you're done in a wet palette for like 3 or 4 days.
Right.
It really extends the time that you have to work with it. If I am just doing, single step painting, or, like on screen, for example, the Little Viking Lady, which is a miniature from Blood Rage, which is a great game if you've never played it. It's very fun, goes very fast. There were 4 of her in the box, and it's such a small amount of paint. Like, I knew I was going to sit down and this was going to be done in 2 hours. I did not need to fuss with all of that. So with that, oftentimes what I will use is actually bases that I don't need anymore. Okay. Mostly because I have a billion of these things hanging out. That they're just littered all over the place on my working desk. I think this is for a Great and Clean one, actually.
Yeah, it looks big.
That I don't own.
Like a Great and Clean.
I think that I sold it. I forgot to send the guy the base. So sorry, guy, if you're out there and bought a base GO from me. But yeah, these or like anything, honestly, anything that is circular and a basin is fair game for me. This is a lid to one of the basing agents that I use that got worn out. It's for the wood for your Nurgle guys, actually.
Nice.
And now it's both a painting and a super glue tray. So wet palettes, yes, they're very good, and you should have one if you're going to paint regularly. You don't have to spend a bunch of money on one. There's a ton of videos on YouTube of how to make one out of like some parchment paper and a Tupperware and a sponge.
Right.
They work just as well. They do. There's no functional difference between them. They're the exact same thing. They're just not as pretty. But you should definitely have one if you're going to do longer sessions. Like if I were to sit down and paint like 120 termagants, for example, I would probably get out the wet palette just because there's no way that 120 fiddly little bastards doesn't take me 2 or 3 days.
Well, I feel a lot better because my 60, or no, what was it? The 45 80. Blight Kings that I sent you, I feel a lot less bad about.
Oh yeah, no, the Blight Kings. Honestly, the Blight Kings were a lot of fun. I'm sorry for missing this dude, and I'll send him back to you with the rest of them. I really liked painting these guys. These guys have enough different poses and different details on them that they're honestly kind of fun to paint, even if you're doing, there's enough variation in them that even though you're doing 45 of them, they're like 5 or 6 different poses.
Right.
And sometimes there's even more. Like there were a couple guys that had like crab arms coming out. Yeah. There were only like 2 or 3 of them in there. So it really kept it interesting. Your Mortec guard, on the other hand, was not fun.
Yeah, Erica, all 60 of them.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
But
not bad.
That's okay. Getting my start in Game of Thrones game was also, I mean, all you're doing when you paint stuff for the Game of Thrones is your badge painting.
Right.
Because, you know, there are 12 dudes in a unit. The unit tops has 4 different sculpts, and you might need 3 or 4 of the same unit. So you're sitting there painting the same 50
Same thing.
dudes.
Yeah.
There's no avoiding it. Honestly, with badge painting, for me, it's just do the test model, get the steps laid out that you're going to do it, and then just knock it out.
Throw
By the
a
time that you finish the 45th one, the first one is dry, and you can just keep going.
throw a Netflix show on and just zone out.
Exactly.
All right, let's go into so the process. How do you stay focused and power through a big shipment of commissioned work, like we were just talking about?
Like we were just talking about. It depends. So part of it is painting is legitimately my de-stressing activity. It calms me down. The only other thing that I have found that is close to it is building computers, and that's really expensive. So I can't exactly do that very often, but I can paint whenever I want. So especially if it's something really fun or interesting to paint, like these that you sent me, I loved these things so much. These are so fun to paint, dude. I could not put these things down once I started working on them.
That's so cool.
It just goes really easily. You know, there's not a lot of powering through, and the focus just kind of comes from naturally wanting. I want to do it,
right?
So it's easy to focus on. There are some days that, like, you know, the brain changes channels too quickly. I'm sitting here, you know, in front of my main computer desk where I also do a ton of painting. As you can tell, I keep grabbing your models and showing them to the camera. So I work here quite a lot. But if there's something that I really need to like sit down and focus on, I do actually have another desk in that room out there that has no electronics on it. That lets me just sit there. I get my phone out, I plug my headphones in, I queue up an audiobook or a big playlist, and you just kind of vibe and enter the zone, just like when you're gaming or anything like that. You just hit a stride and enter the zone and just paint 45 plague bearers.
Yeah.
And a lot of it too, you know, with big blocks like that, a lot of it too is breaking it up. You know, I paint while I do other things. So we play Dungeons and Dragons digitally as well. And I'm a fiddler. I have to have something to do with my hands.
Gotcha.
And so for simpler stuff where I can still pay attention and fulfill the fiddling aspect of it through painting, I can sit there and I'm playing D&D and I'm being attentive and a good player and I'm actually engaging in the game. But because it's a simpler series of steps, like washing or something like that, I can sit there and I can do that at the same time. And then at the end of the night, I don't even really feel like I've, you know, spent the night painting. I've spent the night gaming. But the wash is done and it's now drying. So just breaking it up into blocks if it's a less fun part or just enjoying doing it.
Well, I definitely the next batch you should be a lot of big monsters. You'll have some fun.
I love painting big monsters. Yeah. As you can probably tell by most of what is on my Instagram account, I love painting big monsters.
Well, you'll get quite a bit. Like Glockhan's coming, my friend.
I am excited for that. Maybe it will motivate me to actually paint mine. It's gray on the other shelf, judging me silently.
All right, let's move on to how do you balance your artistic ideas with client requests? So this is good.
You live 2 weeks away from me. That's how I balance that.
Okay, all right.
It takes a week to ship your stuff back to you, and then it usually takes you about a week to ship things back to me for the next job. So I kind of break it up like that. When I don't have something on my desk, I vigorously work on my own stuff. But there is also times where you have to realize the blocks for what they are. If you find yourself really not having fun with what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to force yourself through it.
Right.
There's no helping it. And there have been some things that I have just monstrously hated painting. And it's nothing that you sent me, by the way. I had to
Well,
paint. Oh, go ahead.
so something I was gonna say with this is one of the things that and maybe it's just because I'm not so picky as a client, right? But one of the things that I respect as far as when I send you stuff is, a lot of the times you'll be like, hey, what do you want for this? And I'll send you something back saying, use your best guess or use your best judgment.
Yeah.
Because I
We were
want
talking about that before the show.
right, like I want. At the end of the day, you're still an artist, right? And because you're an artist, I want some of that artist to play out in what you're painting. Like I don't want it to just all be me. Like I want, if there's something that you think this that would be better done doing it this way or having this color or whatever, I want you to portray that in the work as well, because at the end of the day, if I were to ever present any of these into any paint competition, you're the one who takes the credit, not me, right? So I want your artistry to come out in this and have fun doing the work as well, rather than me just saying, oh, well, I want this, 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 and this. And that's just the only way it's going to be done. Like, because that's not going to be fun for anyone that's artistic, right? So
Yeah. And there are plenty of people out there who will go the opposite route. And they are very specific about the things that they want. And we were talking about it a little bit before the show. The way that you do things is very fun for me, and it's very refreshing. I kind of get to stretch it and do push in the directions that I think will look good. But it's also kind of nerve-wracking because when I send you that first test model, I'm like, "Ooh, I hope he likes the things I did to it." And so far, we have a really good track record.
Yeah,
of that.
so far it's been really good. It's been really good.
But there are plenty of people out there who will send you a box of adjudicators and say, "I want the box art. I want gold and gold armor and blue cloth and a Reichland flesh shade wash." I have had people get that specific with me, where they say, like, I want it with the Seraphim sepia wash that you see on the box art. And I go, well, okay. That can be nice too. You don't have to think about it. You just pull up a picture of the box from their website and say, oh, I'm just going to make you look like that.
I mean, it's paint by numbers at that point, right?
It really is paint by numbers at that point. At that point, you are just saving somebody else time. And hopefully doing it faster than they would have on their own. Because you do learn painting as much as I do. You do learn how to do things very quickly. I look at some old models that I kind of have a mental track record of how long it took me, and I shake my head because I'm like, man, I just didn't know back then. All the different tricks and shortcuts and different processes that I do now that have really cut down on the amount of time it takes me to get good looking models from plastic to looking good. So it's a bit of a mix of both, and for balancing it, even if it's something that I'm having fun painting, if it's something really, really detailed, like your Blight Kings, there comes a point where you are 10 hours into it. None of the minis are finished yet because you're batch painting them, so you're doing step by step by step by step. So you're 10 hours into it, and your brain hasn't actually hit you with that dopamine rush of finishing a thing. And you look at it and you think, well, I probably still have another 10 hours to go before that step. And if you try to force yourself through it, you're just going to do like 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, and it's going to take you forever to actually get through it. So I have a bunch of, I have little guys just sort of floating around my desk. I have some trees over there. I have terrain up there. I love terrain. Terrain is super easy to paint, and it's super fast to paint. And it's so big that if you make a minor mistake on it, either no one's going to notice, or it will just look like moss. And it will be fine. Because buildings look weird.
Right.
They have all kinds of weird different colors on
Defects,
them.
yeah.
That orange splotch on the middle of the wall. I don't know. Somebody spilled their slushy on it a year ago and it stained the
Yeah.
plaster. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's whatever. It just adds a little bit of character to it. So if I'm really in a slump of, I need the satisfaction of finishing something, a lot of times what I turn to is terrain, because I can do a house or a little cove of trees or like one of the wildwood sets that Citadel makes. I can do that in 3 hours and start to finish, go out into my garage, prime it, let the primer dry, bring it in, and then finish it that night. And the momentum of having finished a thing lets you get right back to the other stuff that you were working on and continue making that steady progress on it.
Okay. It breaks up the monotony and it allows you to get that dopamine hit of finishing something. That's actually that's pretty good. I didn't even think about doing that. That's actually
it's also why I liked how many heroes were in the lot that you sent me, was because I could use them as well. A lot of those heroes got painted in one fell swoop, from primer to done.
Well, I think
because I would use them to break up the batch painting.
Right. I think our favorite models of that last batch were the Nurglings. They were just, gosh, those Nurglings.
They were so fun to paint, dude. I'd never actually seen them in person before.
Yeah.
And they were a lot of fun.
We loved those things. All right, Erica, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. Yeah. So, what do you like? What do you hate? If you're like, if I could paint this model, this is on my to-do list, or if you're like, I never want to paint another one of these models ever again.
Yeah, so I love big demons so much. I have so many of them. I have, I think, everything that GW makes except for a Keeper of Secrets. They just don't vibe with me. And I have almost everything that Creature Caster has ever put out in their demon line.
Nice.
And I have some really obscure stuff. Like I have some Maris Miniatures demons as well. They're a small, I think they're Spanish or English company. They do hand casting still.
Wow.
So they're all hand poured resin. I have Cabanda up on my shelf right now, which I'm deeply looking forward to working on. And the other thing I love is big dragons. I love painting big things, and I love getting nitty gritty on them. You know, the process of base coating, honestly, working on anything that big, when you sit down, you're looking at this big hunk of gray plastic and you're like, wow, I am looking at the next 80 hours of my hobby time.
Yeah.
Because this is going to take forever.
Well, it's a daunting task.
It is a daunting task. And sometimes I break it up. I have a Vorgoroth sitting on my shelf in the other room, the big corn dragon. And he is almost done now. He has been in a state of painted but not quite done for some months now. And it's just kind of whenever it strikes me, I'll take him off the shelf and I'll do another step on him. And then I'll say, okay, dry brushing you took 4 hours. You go back on the shelf now.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's almost masochistic, really, but I love big models. As for least favorite, there's actually like a definitive, non-ambiguous answer that I have for this. I was once hired to paint some Marvel Crisis Protocol terrain, and I hated literally every second.
Wow, really?
Of it. It was, oh my god, man.
Interesting.
And I can't even remember if it's on my Instagram account. I should put it up there if it's not, because I did a banger ass job on it, but I hated it. I hated it so much. Oh my lord. It's just, I paint, and you know this, you have a lot of things that I've painted. I paint in a real dirty, grimy, kind of grimdark way.
Yeah.
And Marvel Crisis Protocol is not that.
Yeah, Marvel's super clean.
It's super clean.
Yeah.
Black lining.
Yeah.
Edge lining.
Yeah.
Incredibly saturated, vibrant colors.
Right.
Cell shading was a nightmare to paint, and I never want to do it again.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
just did not care for it.
I definitely prefer the more grimdark type paint styles for sure. That being said, I will be very interested to see what your thoughts are of the Gitz army that I sent you.
Okay.
They're not so much clean like the Marvel like the MCP stuff, but you'll it's very it's like candy color type of paint style. Like it's very whimsical. That's the word I'm looking for. Erica did a amazing job painting the moon shrine, and it is fantastic. I it's exactly what my army is modeled after as far as the Gits goes. Um, that'll be the next army that I send you because that's hopefully something that I'm gonna go to LVO with next year. So we got to start jumping on that dragon, but um, that'll be the next army that I send you. But
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, I look forward to it.
yeah, it's very candy color. It'll be
Maybe.
yeah, maybe we'll see. It's not demon, I'll tell you that. But we'll see. We'll see what you think about it.
It's not MCP, but
It's
it
definitely not
is
MCP.
really freaking neon.
Yes, it's very neon candy color type of scheme for sure.
And you know, I think that'll be
Psychedelic
fine.
mushroom.
The big thing, honestly, was the physical act of like the cell shading.
Yeah, yeah,
It is not something that I do.
right,
It's not something that I normally do. It's very far outside. It's a completely different style compared to how I normally paint.
right.
Um, and I always liked the look of it, so I thought that working on it would be really cool. I was wrong. Huge amount of respect to people who paint in that style all
Yeah.
the time. It looks sick. It really is impressive to make a 3D model look like a picture out of a 2D comic.
Right.
But not for me, not my cup of tea. To actually do it. To look at it, sure, great. Love looking at it.
But it's a
Do not
pain
like
to paint.
doing it. It is a pain to paint.
Okay. All right. The next one is, and as you can see, okay, so just a real quick side note on it. Obviously, you can see the color scheme of the Legion of the First Prince army that I went with on this slide. But more importantly, is this King Broad that we sent you is so. I wish we would have put the other giants on here because we bought 4 of the giants before King Broad came out, and you matched this dude so similarly to the other giants. We were shocked. We were like, because I won't lie to you, because everything I've sent you has been, new or like starting from scratch, right? I was very nervous about sending you something that's already been done, and you knocked it out of the park. Me and Erica were like, "Wow, you can't even tell it's from a different painter altogether." Like it's.
I mean, even just the range
Yeah.
on the pictures, looking at Be'lakor versus the giant, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
We're fangirling again.
Yeah. It was that I'm very so, and that's another thing. As we finish up with all of these new armies that I'm sending you, there will be quite a bit of, oh well, I've already got a paint scheme that I bought an army out of. Can you match it, right? So there will be some of
Yeah.
that'll come through, and
Oh,
honestly,
IDK.
yeah. Oh gosh, the IDK. I will say the IDK army that we purchased, it's painted really well. It's painted really really well, and it doesn't like I never want the paint schemes to be identical. Like for what you did with King Broad, that's perfect because as long as it looks like it should go with the army, it doesn't need to be the exact same paint scheme, right? It doesn't need to be pants need to be blue, shirt needs to be red. Like as long as it fits the army style, that's all I care about. Because it could be a completely different, group of individuals that join the army. As long as they look similar, they don't have to be exact, right?
Because you think about it, in World 2, what are
Right.
the odds that there were enough berry bushes for every
Right.
giant to dye his
Exactly. Yep.
loincloth the exact same shade of blue?
100%.
Uh,
Right. Yep.
they had to
Yep.
stomp a different bush at some point,
Yes. Exactly.
and it came out a little
Touche.
different.
Yes. Yeah.
Touche.
So not going on a side tangent anymore. What are some of the biggest tips and tricks for new painters? What would you throw out there?
Learn what washes are very early on because they save you a ton of time.
Okay.
That is, and figure out an order in which to do things. There's a lot of outdated advice out there that I would really recommend more or less completely ignoring. If you go and you Google and you say, tips for starting out painting, a lot of this stuff is like 7, 8, 9 years old at this point, and it comes from a sort of a different mindset to the hobby. A lot of the stuff that I found, 5 years ago when I was starting out, was advice that I completely don't follow anymore.
Okay.
For example, a lot of stuff is rooted in like the older heavy metal style of painting, and they say prime black and work up from there.
Right. Yep,
Because you
heard
don't
that
have to
one.
worry about shadows if you
Right.
prime black, because if you miss something, it's just black and it looks like it's a dark spot and it's fine, which is true. But it's not a universal true. If you want to paint white, don't prime your model black. If you want to do a big, bright paint job, don't prime your model
Right.
black
Right.
because it's going to take you 4 or 5 coats
Right.
to cover your black primer. And even at the end of it, if you painted a model that you primed black and a model that you primed gray and a model that you primed stark white with the exact same paints and did it until you had a fully opaque, because they're never fully opaque, coat, these models would look different.
Right.
The one that was primed white will be more vibrant than the one that was primed black. Yeah, and it's not always a black versus a white prime. It depends on what your end goal is, should dictate what color that you prime, and also what you want to use
Right.
as your main medium, what kind of look that you're going for. But a lot of advice that you see out there is a little dated, and it suggests just priming black. Nowadays, you would probably find something that has taken the name slap chop
Yes. Yep.
as
That's
a
a big
painting
one.
method,
Yep.
um, which has had a big resurgence. It's not new. It's been around for a very, very long time. We used to just call it zenithal highlighting.
Yep.
And before that, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but it was just Grizzle painting
Okay.
on a canvas, which was just doing things in white to black to gray tone. And it's been around for hundreds of years, well before we were painting small plastic men
Okay.
as a
Okay.
sort of conceptual art style.
I mean,
Other
that's definitely one you hear all the time is slap chop for sure.
Oh yeah, it it works. It gets armies on the table very, very quickly. Or if you need to paint a board game or something, you want to spice up your Blood Rage or your Shogun, something like that. It gets things done very, very quickly.
Right.
It has a sort of predictable look to it, but it's a pretty good predictable look. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, you know.
Right. Right.
um, the other thing, the other biggest tip and trick for new painters, I would say, is uh, get the right brush for the job that you want to do. Don't be afraid of trying new techniques. Dry brushing seemed scary when I first started doing it. I promise, dry brushing is not that scary. You only have to ruin a couple of models before you get it looking good. Just
Right.
don't use a paper towel.
Right.
Um, you don't want a lot of brush, or you don't want a lot of paint on the brush. You don't want that paint to be dry. You just don't want a lot of it. If you use a paper towel for dry brushing, the towel will suck out all the moisture from the paint, and that's why dry brushing looks chalky a lot of the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
When I first started, the biggest thing was just watching videos of painters who were and still are much better than me to do things in front of me. And they're, especially now with YouTube and Twitch being in the state that they are, there's so much of that out there. If you don't know how to paint something and you want some pointers on how to do it, just look it up. Somebody has painted it, I promise. If you want to know how to paint a power sword, type in "how do I paint a power sword" into YouTube. You'll find probably the exact kind of power sword that you want to paint, with some dude painstakingly doing it for 45 minutes in front of you.
Right.
And really, the last thing is, I'd just say don't be afraid of screwing up minis. Your first mini is gonna suck. There's no way around it.
You learn by doing mistakes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a learning mechanism, right?
Yeah, I still have the first mini I ever painted. I still have a Tyranid Warrior that I painted when I was 14, and the paint is so thick that you can't see his ribs on his chest.
Yeah.
His extraordinarily defined ribs. No, gone, completely obliterated by how thick the paint was.
So is there any? I know you said go watch YouTube or Twitch or something. Is there any in particular that you would go watch? I mean, just the one that I would call out is definitely Jason from Monument, or Vince Ventrella is also fantastic.
Yeah, Vinny V is good. I also, when I first started it, I watched a gambit of people. I watched Miniac, who I think is still doing videos, but less often now, unfortunately. I like Not Just Mecha with Marco. He has a ton of videos dedicated to speed painting, which even if that's not your goal, the things that you will learn from speed painters who knock out squads in 3-4 hours will make you a better, faster painter. Because that's where you're going to learn all the tricks that let you skip whole steps.
Right.
And still get a really good looking result. Because he gets really good looking results, and it does not take him a lot of time. It will take you longer. He has done this for 100,000 hours. It's his profession. Don't hold yourself to the standards that you're seeing people replicate in these videos.
Right.
But you can learn things from people. The other guy that I would recommend, if you really want to get in-depth and nitty-gritty and talk about some real, fundamentals of the concept, is James Wappel. He's probably one of the best painters in the world. Do not think that anything that you will paint will look anything like what he paints. I don't understand how he makes some things do the things that he makes them do.
Right.
He took contrast paint and some white and did chrome armor with it, and I watched him do it in real time, and I don't understand.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
But from watching these incredibly skilled painters who have the benefit of doing this for tens and tens of thousands of hours and going to golden demons and winning golden demons, you will learn how to do it. Just don't hold yourself to that standard.
Okay. All right. Okay. These are good. Definitely will shadow that. Zach, if you could send me some of those links, I'll throw them in the YouTube link when we post it.
Yeah, I will send you a couple of the channels that I frequent that I think are real good for starters. A lot of these people, they actually have starter focused videos.
Right.
And a lot of it is starting on techniques too, start painting, start dry brushing, how to use contrast paint, how to use speed paint, how to prime, how to use an airbrush.
Right.
Every time that I picked up a new tool, I would go watch one of these kind of simply named, unimaginatively titled videos, because if you skip the basics, you will never actually get good with it.
Right.
So at least having someone sit there and explain the basics to you like you're 5 and in elementary school again is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that, Everyone started somewhere. Everyone painted a Tyranid Warrior that you can't see the ribs on anymore. Even James and Marco started off ruining whatever they were working on. They weren't good day one.
Right. I mean that's all. I've always thought that, as far as you learn through mistakes, right? That's just a learning mechanism that you learn and then you carry on with you to the next day. So
yeah, takes practice.
Yes.
All right. Last slide. Erica, do you want to go through this one?
Yeah. What is on your bucket list in terms of painting? What's next? What are some things that you're like, oh man, I it's on my to-do list or on my wish list for painting?
I have a couple of shelves in the other room. I have a shelf that I call the Dragon Shelf. You get to guess what's on it, and I have a shelf called the Demon Shelf, and you get to guess what's on it. Um, they are about half gray or more right now. I would like them to not be gray at all. I think that that would look super cool. It's right next to the gaming table where we play Dungeons and Dragons on. It sort of overlooks it. You can just look right up at it. Um, uh,
Display.
Ominously, we are playing at our physical table. We are playing a campaign called Tyranny of Dragons. So my players look up at the dragon shelf with a certain amount of anxiety because I've told them they will have to fight most of what is on it at some point
Nice.
during the campaign. But yeah, getting those done, I think, would be really big milestones for me. Those are probably like my short-term goals, which is really probably in the next year or two. I'd like to get those done. And then like sort of the hallmark thing, the two big things. I'd like to do a diorama at some point.
Nice. Okay.
I don't know of
Oh.
what. I have no thoughts other than that. Like this is sort of conceptually a thing that I would like to do. Um, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And then I would like to go lose a golden demon
Oh, you
at some
totally
point
should
in
do it.
time.
You should totally do it.
Just for the experience of seeing something that I put color on in one of the cases. That would be enough for me. I don't need an honorable mention. I don't need a consideration pin or anything like that. If that were to happen, then great. I don't need a Slayer's sword, but just I think that the experience of entering painting competitions is worth it because it makes you consider things from an artistic standpoint that you would never consider otherwise.
Right.
Because you're not painting something, to a tabletop standard, to a tabletop plus standard. Honestly, there are some things that I have painted that have been with the mindset of I'm going to enter this in a competition, even if it's some, a local competition, a best painted for your local shop or something like that. And the result has been some of the things that I am most proud of ever having painted, like the Kairos
Right.
that is on screen.
Oh,
I spent probably 50 hours just painting
It's
that one bird.
beautiful.
it's
And
gorgeous.
thank you. And I love how he turned out. And there's a part of me that knows, it has to be even better than that. It has to be miles better than that at a competition at that level. So I don't know when I'm gonna do it. I just know that I would like to attend and submit something to go, like I said, to go lose a golden demon.
I will. So two things on that.
But to be there.
One, I will say, as far as the Golden Demon goes, I'm sure you've watched Vince's uh,
Oh
relatively
yes.
new videos on that because it's a big deal for him not entering in the Golden Demon anymore. So I do hope that they do fix the aspect of not giving feedback for the Golden Demon because I think that's what his biggest complaint was is it's okay to not win at the Golden Demon, but at least to give some of the things that can be done better with such a high regarded painting competition.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they fix that because, I mean, that's when you think of models, hobbying anything in the miniature realm, right? You gravitate towards Golden Demon. That's like
Yeah.
it's the like epitome of
It's the Super
competitions.
Bowl.
Yes, exactly. So I'm hoping that they
It's a
get
good way
better.
to put.
I'm hoping they get better as far as feedback for that goes because I did understand why Vince was bummed and why he's not going to enter in anymore. But it is definitely the Super Bowl of art,
Yeah.
of art. And
And
then
I've done smaller competitions.
right,
I've entered into Lord of the Print runs, some monthly painting competitions, and Creature Caster does quarterly
right,
ones. And I enter into those honestly just as practice pieces to sort of make me slow down, stop painting armies, and really spend 100 hours on a single project. I think it's probably where I actually improve the most on the technical side of things is spending, I mean, just weeks of hobby time staring
Right.
at the exact same thing and finding every little imperfection and detail and trying to make it as perfect as I can. Because even these, smaller competitions, they have incredible painters that
Right.
enter these things.
Yep.
And some of them do give feedback, which is honestly why I do it, because it's really helpful to have someone who has looked at 400 people's
Right.
entry and say, hey, um, your shadows are wrong.
Right.
You have your light sources are confused. You have highs here, and you also have highs here on the other side, on the underside where it should be darker. Um, because otherwise you might never notice those things.
Right.
It's easy to keep doing them if nobody ever points them out to you, and the things that uh, outside of a competition, honestly, no one will probably ever notice
Right.
because it's very nitpicky because it
Right.
has to be.
Right. I mean, there's so many artists out there too.
Oh yeah,
The other thing too, the other comment I was going to make that if we, yeah, and Eric and I have already talked about this. If we ever put something on display for painting, it's your name will always be on it, right? We don't take any credit in the painting. Anytime someone's like, "Oh man, that paint job looks cool," I'm like, "Yeah, can't take credit for it. I didn't do it."
well,
Just
I appreciate
because
that.
it's definitely not my paint job. It's something that you spent way more time, invested in. So, any time that Eric and I are at any GTS or something, like doing like a paint competition, your name always goes on it because like
Well, thank you so much.
yeah,
I
we
do
don't
appreciate that.
we didn't do it.
No,
And that's
not
one
even a
thing
little
that
bit.
I'm always real big about. Sometimes I sell models that I didn't myself paint. I came into them either like through a trade,
Right.
or just by buying a bigger lot that had
Hmm.
something I wanted in it, but I don't really want these dudes, so I'll move them on to someone else. And sometimes I'll get questions like, "Hey, what red is that?" Or "Hey, how'd you paint that?" And I say, "Oh no, I didn't." Um, I can't take any credit for it. Sometimes I'll try and help them out, like, "Hey, what red is that?" I'm like, "I don't know exactly, but maybe try these.
This, yeah.
Though they should be close." But I couldn't tell you how it was done because I didn't paint them.
Right. All right. So we'll move on. That's it. That's all we got. You guys can revel in the Bellacore paint job. Seems like that is like the showpiece for anyone in miniature painting is the Bellacore because it's such an
He's so
amazing
fun to paint.
sculpt. Yeah, such a crazy sculpt. I still love my Bellacore. I still add him to all my lists because I love that dude. Such a, I think the way you painted um, my Bellacore, it's just such a unique take on him. Not
It
many
definitely
people.
is. I don't think I've ever seen a white one.
Yes, a white Bellacore is definitely very
I
interesting.
mean, to do grungy demon with the bright colors.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that army. I like that
So
scheme.
I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, thank you. Obviously, we still have quite a bit to send you. We're not even close to our end point. We have so much to send you. So look forward to that, and I hope we don't take too much time off of your personal hobby goals. But we do thank you quite a bit for getting a lot of this painted and keeping us sane and not spending so much time just in the hobbying aspect because there's definitely people that do it better than we do. So we definitely appreciate it.
But yeah, no, I like I said, I really like working with y'all. Y'all are great clients.
Yeah.
Uh, like I said, the process of actually going and advertising yourself and dealing with just this tremendous influx of people who ghost you
Yeah.
or who didn't have an accurate idea of what pricing looks like. People can get very nasty very quickly
Yeah.
um, on some of this stuff. So I appreciate just really not having to deal with that.
Right.
um, and like I said, like you said, the creative freedom, honestly, that you give me, you just let me make cool things for you.
Right.
give me color scheme guidelines, and then I go to town and we run it past each other. I think it's a good process, and it's one that I really enjoy working on your stuff through.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I like the partnership we have as far as the art stuff goes. So it's good.
I do also think that there is a very specific talent that we have not yet discussed tonight, and that is how to pack a box of plastic crack.
Oh my gosh.
And the amount of times that we have had to struggle with foam and packing tape and boxes that have gone back and forth way too many times.
Oh,
That is a talent in and of itself.
Oh, it sure is. That case is an MVP though that you
That-
guys have.
that
That thing
case
has gotten.
That has gone back and forth. I don't know how many times now, and it has saved so many models. Like, it is incredibly hard to pack, but man, that thing has been MVP to get things back and forth.
I wonder how many miles are on that case.
There's a lot.
There's a
a
lot at this point. And I am always impressed. I mean, things, they're so small. Things are gonna bustle and break.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have never opened that thing up to find just a decimated model.
Right.
Everything has been quickly super gluable, quickly plastic gluable,
Yeah.
with barely a seam line between it. That case, honestly, our painting back and forth is probably the best advertising campaign that the guys who make that case could ever run, because it has gotten some fragile models
Yeah,
in
for
one
real.
piece all the way across
There's
the
some
country.
things where I get back the box. I'm like, that's obviously gonna need to be fixed, and that little tiny piece is gonna come off. And sure enough, like those things just stay intact somehow, some way. I don't understand it, but we'll continue to use that case until it blows up. So.
Yes.
All right. So then, last but not least, the conclusion. Just what's coming up. Next week, I'm probably gonna go over some meta lists that are coming up because Eric and I both have a GT and our first tournament in quite a while. From a store, just a little. We have a little mini store tournament next weekend. And I kind of want to go over some lists on that and just kind of do a follow-up list. We'll get Cameron on here. He's very good about breaking down lists and stuff like that. So we'll do that. And then the week after that is the 2 weeks after that I think is the GT, and we'll get more involved into what people are taking for that and a recap of the GT, because that's so far I think there's like 40 people at that one, I think. So we'll go through that and get more into the competitive aspect rather than the hobbying aspect. So it was good to have the hobbying here because, I definitely learned a lot from this because I'm definitely not one to hobby as much as, like Zach does. So it was very helpful. Erica, you got anything else?
No, just thanks so much, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sure.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Zach. We appreciate it. Obviously tell your wife we said thank you for anything that she's painted for us.
And the time that she's allowed you to paint
Yes.
for us.
Yes, that's the other thing too. Yep. All right. On that note, we'll end up here, and guys, have a good Tuesday night, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Okay.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.